September 20th, 1942. Morning air drifts across Naval Air Station North Island in San Diego, carrying the scent of salt and oil. On the flight line, a single aircraft stands apart from all others. A sleek, pale fighter that seems out of place amid the Navy's blue-gray fleet. Its curves are graceful, its lines predatory. Painted over with American stars, it still bears the soul of Japan. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders climbs into the cockpit, his gloved hands trembling just slightly. Before him, the instrument panel is filled with Japanese characters. The throttle feels light, the stick alive beneath his palm. Around the hangar, armed guards watch closely. None of them speak. They know that what's about to happen could change the war. This aircraft, this enemy machine, should not exist in American hands. It is a Mitsubishi A6M2, Model 21, the infamous Zero. For nearly a year it has ruled the skies over the Pacific, untouchable, unstoppable, until now. But to understand how it came to rest here in the calm California sunlight, we must go back to the cold gray waters of the North Pacific, 5 months earlier. June 4th, 1942. The same day American dive bombers strike the heart of Japan's fleet at Midway, 4 carriers burning in the sea. Far to the north, a smaller drama unfolds amid the wind-lashed Aleutian Islands. 19-year-old Flight Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga launches his Zero from the deck of the carrier Ryujo. His mission: attack the American outpost at Dutch Harbor, Alaska, as part of a diversion meant to draw attention away from Midway. Koga is young but skilled, proud of his aircraft, Japan's newest, most feared weapon. The morning goes as planned. Koga and his wingmen strike Dutch Harbor with precision, their guns raking the docks and fuel tanks. American defenders scramble, but their PBY patrol bombers and old fighters are no match. One by one they fall to the Zeros. The sky belongs to Japan. Then fate intervenes with a single bullet. Ground fire from a .50 caliber machine gun pierces the Zero's belly, slicing through the oil return line. Within seconds, Koga's windshield glistens black. The engine begins to shudder, choking on its own lifeblood. Koga knows his aircraft will not survive long. He radios his leader, reports the damage, and turns east toward Akutan Island, an emergency landing site designated for such moments. A submarine waits offshore to rescue any pilot forced down. As he approaches Akutan, Koga spots what looks like salvation, a wide, flat meadow of green grass. Perfect for landing. His wingmen circle above as he lowers the gear, aligning for approach. But from their vantage point, one of them, Petty Officer Shikata, sees something that chills him. The field isn't solid ground. Between the blades of grass, water glints like glass. It's a bog. Shikata tries to radio a warning, but it's too late. Koga is already committed. The Zero touches down at 80 miles per hour. For an instant, it seems to work, smooth, steady, graceful. Then the wheels sink. The aircraft flips forward violently, snapping over itself like a toy. The engine tears from its mounts. The canopy slams into the ground. Inside, Koga's neck breaks instantly. His hands never release the stick. Above, his 2 wingmen circle in horror. They know their orders: destroy any downed Zero to prevent capture. But the wreck looks intact, too intact. Koga's body is still strapped in, unmoving. Could he be alive? Could he be waiting for rescue? They cannot bring themselves to fire. After several passes, low on fuel, they turn back toward the carrier. The submarine assigned for rescue surfaces hours later, but is driven off by an American destroyer. And so the world's most valuable aircraft lies hidden, upside down in a remote Alaskan bog, waiting for discovery. For more than 5 weeks, the Zero rests undisturbed. Fog blankets the island almost daily, concealing it from both sky and sea. The Japanese assume Koga and his aircraft are lost forever. The Americans have no idea such a prize exists. The war surges onward. Midway, Guadalcanal, the Solomons. But on Akutan Island, history sleeps beneath the grass. Then, on July 10th, 1942, chance intervenes. A U.S. Navy PBY Catalina patrol bomber, piloted by Lieutenant William Thies, loses its way in the endless fog. Magnetic compasses are unreliable this far north, and landmarks are hidden beneath clouds. Flying low over Akutan Island, a machinist's mate named Albert Knack happens to look down. Through a fleeting break in the mist, he spots something unnatural, an aircraft lying belly up in the marsh painted with bright red circles. "Lieutenant," he calls, "there's a Jap plane down there." Thies circles the site, confirming what his crew can hardly believe. A Japanese Zero nearly intact. He marks the coordinates carefully and returns to Dutch Harbor. Within hours, word spreads through the base like wildfire. A recovery party is assembled and sent to the island. What they find astonishes them. The bog that claimed Koga's life has also saved the aircraft. The soft, wet ground cushioned the impact, leaving the airframe mostly undamaged. The fuselage is straight. The wings are intact. Only the propeller and canopy are crushed. It is, in essence, a complete Zero, something Allied intelligence had dreamed of but never seen. Koga's body remains inside, suspended upside down by his seatbelt. The men remove him gently, laying him on the grass beside his aircraft. They find his service pistol and his samurai sword still strapped to his waist. His flight suit is immaculate, save for the white bandages wound carefully around his torso, a precaution against high G-forces. They bury him on a nearby hillside, overlooking the crash site, and mark the grave with a simple cross. The respect is genuine. Even in war, they know what they've found is sacred, a man and his machine bound together in death. The recovery itself proves a Herculean task. Akutan Island is treacherous, mud, rain, wind, and relentless cold. The Zero sits half buried in the bog, impossible to move by ordinary means. Engineers construct makeshift roads of logs and planks, winching the fighter inch by inch across the swamp. It takes nearly 3 weeks of grueling labor. The men work in freezing rain, their hands raw, their equipment constantly failing. At night they sleep in tents soaked through by fog. But they persevere, knowing the prize that waits. By late July, the Zero is finally dragged to the shoreline and loaded onto a barge. From there it's taken to a cargo ship bound for Seattle. On August 1st, the ship arrives in port, carrying what one officer calls the most valuable piece of property in the Pacific. News of the capture spreads quietly through Navy circles, cloaked in secrecy. The aircraft is loaded onto another vessel for transport to Naval Air Station North Island, San Diego, the heart of American naval aviation research. It arrives in mid-August under heavy guard. As the crate is opened in the hangar, officers and engineers gather around, speechless. For months, they've fought against this machine without understanding how it truly worked. Every air battle since Pearl Harbor had been haunted by it. Pilots described it as a ghost, faster, lighter, more agile than anything they could fly. Now, at last, the ghost stands before them in the flesh. The aircraft is catalogued as serial number 4593. The red Hinamaru circles are painted over with American stars. Guards patrol day and night. No unauthorized eyes are allowed near it. A team of engineers from the Navy and Grumman Aircraft begin the restoration. They work around the clock, documenting every measurement, every rivet, every wire. The process is both delicate and dangerous. They know that a single mistake could destroy this irreplaceable artifact. As they disassemble and inspect the Zero, they uncover its secrets piece by piece. The construction is unlike anything in American design philosophy. The airframe is astonishingly light, just over 5,300 pounds fully loaded, nearly 2,000 pounds lighter than the Navy's F-4F Wildcat. The engineers marvel at the craftsmanship: thin aluminum skin, flush rivets, hand-polished surfaces. Even the gun ports are streamlined to reduce drag. The Zero's designers had pursued one goal above all: performance through lightness. Armor plating? None. Self-sealing fuel tanks? Absent. The pilot's survival depended entirely on not being hit. The trade-off made sense for Japan's early war doctrine, where agility and range meant life or death over vast oceans. The American engineers take notes feverishly. This machine is built like a fine watch, one remarks. Every inspection panel opens with a simple press of a finger. The entire aircraft can be disassembled and reassembled with minimal tools, a clear advantage for Japan's island-based operations. The engine, a Nakajima Sakai 12, 14 cylinders, 9 to 40 horsepower, is removed and bench-tested. It performs beautifully, but its carburetor is of the float type, meaning that under negative Gs, fuel flow ceases, a discovery that would soon prove decisive. Day after day, the team replaces damaged components: a shattered windscreen, bent propeller blades, twisted landing gear. They salvage as much of the original as possible, determined to restore it to flight condition. The process is photographed and logged meticulously. In less than 6 weeks, the impossible happens. The Akutan Zero stands ready once more, gleaming under the California sun. The red circles are gone. In their place, the blue and white star of the United States Navy. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders, chief test pilot, is chosen to fly it. He spends days in the cockpit, memorizing every control, every switch labeled in Japanese characters. He studies intelligence reports from combat pilots who faced the Zero in battle, knowing that soon he'll learn the truth firsthand. On September 20th, 1942, the airfield is silent except for the hum of the Zero's engine warming. On September 20th, 1942, the airfield is silent except for the hum of the Zero's engine warming up. Sanders sits motionless, focused. Around him, engineers and officers watch from the hangar doors. The signal comes. Sanders releases the brakes. The Zero rolls forward, light and eager, gathering speed down the runway. After barely 200 feet, it lifts gracefully into the air. For the first time in history, an American pilot flies Japan's most feared weapon. The aircraft responds beautifully. Smooth, balanced, precise. Sanders climbs to altitude, testing each control surface. The Zero turns on a dime, light as a feather. He performs gentle rolls, then banks into a steep climb. The aircraft leaps skyward. Its performance at low speed is everything the legends promised. But as Sanders pushes faster, past 200 knots, the controls stiffen alarmingly. The ailerons grow heavy, resisting his touch. Above that speed, rolling becomes nearly impossible. The Zero, for all its agility in a slow dogfight, becomes sluggish and unresponsive at high velocity. Sanders notes it carefully. The discovery is critical. After an hour in the air, he brings the aircraft back down. The landing is smooth. Mechanics swarm around, eager for every word. Sanders removes his goggles and grins faintly. "Gentlemen," he says, "we're beginning to understand how to beat this thing." That flight marks the beginning of a revolution in aerial tactics. Over the next few weeks, Sanders will fly 24 more test missions, each one peeling back another layer of the Zero's mystery. The data gathered will be sent to every naval air station, every squadron preparing to fight across the Pacific. But in this moment, September 1942, the work has just begun. In the quiet of the North Island hangar, engineers stand before the captured fighter, aware that this fragile, foreign machine holds the key to victory. For Tadayoshi Koga, his final flight ended in a lonely Alaskan bog. For Eddie Sanders, it has just begun over the blue skies of California. Between them lies a bridge of fate, one that will alter the balance of air power across the Pacific. Sanders returns to the hangar that afternoon with a notebook full of observations. The data is relayed instantly to Commander Frederick Trapnell, the Navy's greatest test pilot and the man supervising the evaluation. Trapnell pores over every line as if decoding a foreign language. He understands instantly what the pilots on Henderson Field never had the luxury to know. The Zero is not invincible. It merely seemed invincible because nobody had seen inside it. Over the next several days, engineers paint small black reference marks along the Zero's wings and fuselage to track stress and flexing under G-loads. They install sensors. Sanders takes it up again and again, each flight carefully designed to test a new regime. High-speed dives, negative G pushovers, snap rolls, climbing turns. The revelations come fast. The Zero's ailerons, so free and effortless at 150 knots, lock up tight above 250. The rudder becomes imprecise in fast dives. The float-type carburetor starves the engine the moment Sanders pushes the nose over hard, causing a split-second cough, a window of vulnerability. The Navy realizes the answer has been there all along. American pilots were trying to dogfight the Zero where it was strongest, not where it was weak. Trapnell drafts the new doctrine himself. Do not turn with a Zero. Dive vertically. Fight in the high-speed regime. It will later be written more bluntly in the bulletins sent to pilots in Guadalcanal. Never engage in a turning fight with a Zero. Stay fast. Use the dive. The Zero cannot roll at high speed. This single directive will save hundreds of lives. Sanders also highlights the Zero's poor roll rate to the right, a result of the direction of the propeller and the design of the wing. Left-hand rolls are slightly faster, but right-hand rolls are lethargic. For an American pilot flying a Wildcat or a Hellcat, this information becomes gold. The Wildcat might not outturn a Zero, but it could outdive it, outroll it, and take more damage. The intelligence reports are compiled at North Island, then printed in small pocket-sized pamphlets. Within weeks, they are shipped to every Pacific carrier, every island airstrip, every forward Navy fighter unit. The effect is immediate. In October 1942, Over Guadalcanal, American pilots begin applying this new doctrine. They refuse to get suckered into horizontal dogfights. Instead, they dive, zoom, shoot, and climb away. Boom and zoom. The same tactic the Zero was vulnerable to, but the Japanese never believed Americans would discover. The Zero suddenly loses its aura of myth. Saburo Sakai, Japan's top surviving fighter ace, would later say the moment the Americans changed tactics in autumn 1942, they stopped losing like before. The tables tipped. Slow, imperceptible at first, then rapidly. Meanwhile, back in San Diego, the test flights continue. On one mid-October afternoon, Sanders pulls the Zero into a steep turning climb. For a moment, he feels what Japanese pilots had felt for a full year, the almost liquid smoothness of the Zero's lift. The fighter seems to float upward as if weightless. He understands how young Koga must have felt. The sense that the machine is an extension of one's nerves, one's pulse, but he also feels something else, and the slight shudder, the buffeting, the strain when he forces it into high-speed maneuvers it wasn't designed for. The edges of its envelope are thin. When he lands and climbs out, he writes one comment in his notebook that would later become famous among Navy tacticians. Fast dive and high-speed roll. That's where we kill it. Engineers from Grumman, including men who are at that very moment designing the F-6F Hellcat, are given access to the Zero. They measure the wing loading, the balance, the cowling profile. They study the propeller pitch, the retracting gear, the control forces. Some of those Grumman men will later admit privately that the Hellcat's design choices, the high dive speed, the heavy, robust structure, were validated from this captured Zero. The Zero didn't inspire the Hellcat, but it confirmed which direction America needed to go. While this is happening, the war in the Solomons intensifies. Henderson Field is under nightly bombardment. Cactus Air Force pilots fight to exhaustion. Fuel is rationed. Spare parts are scraps off wrecks. The Japanese continue to send Zeros from Rabaul and Buin, from carriers and from island bases. The skies over Guadalcanal are a chessboard of death, but something is changing. American pilots begin living longer. An F-4F pilot named Jimmy Flatley sends a report back to Washington. "We no longer fear the Zero. It is one of the most quietly significant sentences in the Pacific War." At North Island, Sanders performs his final flights in the Akutan Zero. After 25 test missions, the Navy feels they've learned everything useful. Plans are drafted to send the Zero to NIK for wind tunnel tests, measurements of lift coefficients, drag curves, stability plots. But before that transfer takes place, the aircraft suffers a tragedy almost as cruel as Koga's. While taxiing at North Island in early 1943, the Zero experiences a mechanical brake failure. A ground crewman tries to stop the aircraft but cannot. It collides slowly, absurdly mild, with a routine utility truck. The damage is catastrophic. The fragile airframe, never armored, crumples like paper. The Akutan Zero will never fly again. Some who witness it later say it felt like fate had simply taken the aircraft back. The same fragility that made it great also doomed it. But the Zero had already yielded its secrets. The wrecked aircraft is sent to NAS Anacostia, Washington, D.C. for static evaluation, then eventually to Chicago for storage. After the war, it becomes a forgotten artifact. In 1945, with the war over and surplus equipment piling up, the remains are scrapped. America is looking forward, not backward. The men who recovered it, the sailors who spent 3 weeks in cold Alaskan rain dragging it from a bog, are never interviewed. Their names rarely appear in history books. Their contribution, while quiet, is immeasurable, because the Zero they found changed everything. The information from that one wreck, the specific performance data, helped shape tactics that turned the tide of the air war. It allowed American pilots to stop chasing the Zero's strengths and instead exploit its weaknesses. It gave birth to doctrine that would produce kill ratios once unthinkable. When the F-6F Hellcat arrived in 1943, it was the perfect predator for the Zero. Robust, fast-diving, heavily armed and armored, it embodied everything the Zero wasn't. In combat, the Hellcat achieved a 19-to-1 kill ratio. Much of that success traces directly to the doctrine and design validated by this one crashed plane. When Koga died in that bog, the Japanese Navy lost more than a pilot. they lost their ghost. The Zero had survived on myth, secrecy, assumptions, fear. Once those myths were broken, it became mortal like any other machine. In 1944, when Japan introduced the A6M5, the improved Zero, the war had moved beyond its reach. American aircraft were heavier, faster, stronger. The skies no longer belonged to Japan. The time for delicate, lightly built, ultra-long-range fighters was over. If you go today to Akutan Island, a lonely green mass in the Aleutians, you will find almost nothing that hints at what happened there. No monument, no museum plaque, just wind, fog, and tundra grass bending under endless gray skies. But on that island, the single most valuable aircraft of the Pacific Air War waited under grass for 5 weeks, long enough for the world to change. A 19-year-old pilot, proud and loyal, flew his Zero with all the tradition of Japan's samurai heritage. He died believing his sacrifice would serve his empire. He could not know that his death would serve the enemy instead. Eddie Sanders, in interviews years later, would always remember that first takeoff, the sensation of lifting into the sky in a machine built to defeat his own. It was like riding the future, he said, except the future had already passed. Between two nations, across ocean and culture, war and fate, the Akutan Zero became an accidental messenger, and the message it gave America was simple: the Zero can be beaten. And from that message came victory across 1,000 miles of blue water, over island chains and burning carriers, through dogfights and dive-bombing raids, all the way to Tokyo Bay, all because one machine flipped in a bog, and one machinist's mate looked down through a break in the fog on July 10, 1942, and said, "There's a Jap plane down there.